The first thing Sebastian Thornbridge noticed when consciousness returned was the silence, not the peaceful kind,
We have
not
to
the
leave.
gentle quiet of a
Now.
Sunday morning at
What are
the
you talking
estate with
about?
No
sunlight
time.
filtering
Follow
through
me.
century-old oak trees and the distant murmur of the household staff preparing breakfast. This was different. This was the silence of a tomb broken only by the steady beep of a heart monitor and the mechanical whisper of machines breathing for him. The second thing he noticed was that he couldn't move. Not his fingers, not his toes, not even his eyelids, which remained frozen half open, offering him a skewed view of an unfamiliar ceiling. Hospital tiles, fluorescent lights, the kind of institutional white that stripped away all warmth, all humanity. The third thing he noticed was her voice. Is he going to wake up Dr. Genevieve, his wife? Her tone was perfect, just the right amount of concern laced with barely restrained grief. The same voice she'd used when his father died a year ago, when she'd stood beside him at the funeral, her hand trembling in his, her eyes glistening with tears that never quite fell. He'd loved her for that strength, for being his anchor when the world felt like it was collapsing. Now trapped in his own body, Bash recognized it for what it truly was, a performance. Mrs. Thornbridge, I'm afraid the prognosis is quite grave. An older man's voice, professional, detached. The accident caused severe trauma to the brainstem. What we're seeing is consistent with locked-in syndrome. His body is paralyzed, but there's a possibility, a very small possibility, that some cognitive function remains. So he can hear me. We can't be certain. Brain activity is minimal. For all practical purposes, your husband's mind is gone. Gone. The word echoed through Bash's consciousness like a death knell. He wanted to scream, wanted to reach out and grab the doctor's coat, shake him, make him understand that he was still here, still aware, still fighting against the prison of his own flesh. But his body refused every command. How long? Genevieve asked. Her voice had shifted, softer now, almost a whisper. Days, perhaps weeks. His body is strong, but without cognitive function. It's only a matter of time before organ failure sets in. I'm very sorry, Mrs. Thornbridge. If you need time alone with him, I can give you a moment. Footsteps, the soft click of expensive shoes against linoleum, the whisper of fabric as the doctor left the room. Then the door closed, and Genevieve's mask fell away like a curtain dropping. She moved into his limited field of vision, and Bash saw her face transform. The careful concern melted into something else, something cold and sharp and hungry. She leaned close, so close he could smell her perfume. Chanel No. 5. The same perfume she'd worn on their wedding day. Finally, she whispered. Her breath was warm against his ear, her lips curved into a smile he'd never seen before. God, I thought I'd have to suffer your tedious lectures forever. 3 years, Bash. 3 years of listening to you drone on about legacy and responsibility and honoring your father's vision. She laughed, soft, musical, the same laugh that had charmed him at that charity gala where they first met. The accident worked perfectly. Now I just need to wait for you to stop breathing, sign a few documents, and everything you own becomes mine. Inside his frozen body, rage exploded like wildfire. But Sebastian Thornbridge hadn't built Thornbridge Industries into a multi-billion-dollar empire by being reckless. Even now, trapped and helpless, his mind worked. Calculated. Observed. If Genevieve wanted him dead, he'd stay dead, until he was ready to rise. 3 years earlier, Boston had been draped in autumn gold. The Thornbridge Foundation's annual charity gala was the social event of the season. Old money and new wealth mingling under crystal chandeliers in the Four Seasons ballroom. Politicians pressing flesh, CEOs comparing portfolios, socialites competing to see who could wear the most expensive dress while claiming they'd bought it at a thrift store. Bash had hated every minute of it. At 29, he'd just taken over as CEO of Thornbridge Industries after his father Edmund stepped back due to health concerns. The pressure was crushing. Board members who'd known him since childhood now scrutinized his every decision. Competitors circled like sharks, sensing weakness in the transition. And everywhere he turned, people wanted something from him. Money, access, influence, never just him. He'd been standing alone near the bar nursing a scotch and contemplating an early exit when she appeared. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else. Bash turned. The woman beside him was striking. Not beautiful in the conventional sense, her features were too sharp, her eyes too calculating, but magnetic nonetheless. Dark hair pulled back in an elegant twist, a dress the color of emeralds that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. But it was her smile that caught him, knowing, amused, like they shared a secret. That obvious, he asked. Only to someone who feels the same way. She extended her hand. Genevieve Hawthorne, I'm coordinating tonight's event. Sebastian Thornbridge, but you probably already knew that. I did. Her handshake was firm, confident. Your father speaks very highly of you. Does he? Bash couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. Edmund had been distant lately, distracted. When they did talk, it was always business, never personal. Genevieve tilted her head, studying him with those sharp eyes. You don't believe him. I believe he thinks I'm not ready to fill his shoes. Are you? The directness surprised him. Most people at these events spoke in careful circles, never saying what they actually meant. But Genevieve looked at him like he was a puzzle she wanted to solve. I don't know, Bash admitted. Ask me in a year. She smiled. I will. And she did. Over the following months, Genevieve appeared at more and more Thornbridge events. Always professional, always charming. She had opinions on art and literature and politics that challenged him. She laughed at his jokes. She listened when he talked about the pressure of legacy, the weight of expectations. She made him feel seen. 6 months after that first meeting, Edmund called him into his study at the family estate in Rhode Island. The room still smelled of his father's cigars and old leather. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls. A portrait of Bash's mother hung above the fireplace. She'd died when he was 12, and Edmund had never remarried. We need to talk about Genevieve Hawthorne, Edmund said without preamble. Bash felt his defenses rise. What about her? She's too interested in the company. She works in event coordination for charitable organizations. Of course she's interested. Edmund leaned back in his chair, fixing Bash with that penetrating stare that had made board members squirm for 40 years. She knows details about our acquisitions, our investments, things that aren't public knowledge. Maybe she's just well informed. Or maybe she's digging. For what? Money, access, whatever people like her are always after. People like her. The dismissive tone ignited something defensive in Bash's chest. You don't even know her. I know her type. I've dealt with fortune hunters my entire life. She's not a fortune hunter. She's intelligent and driven and... Son. Edmund stood, moving to the window that overlooked the estate grounds. I'm not trying to control your life, but I've seen what happens when people marry for the wrong reasons. Your mother and I, Bubba, that was real. This feels manufactured. Bash stood, too, anger overriding his usual deference. You're just afraid I'll be happy, that I'll build something separate from your legacy. Edmund turned, and for a moment Bash saw something in his father's eyes. Not anger, sadness. I'm afraid you'll get hurt, Edmund said quietly. But Bash was 29 and in love, and convinced his father was simply too old, too cynical to understand. So he ignored the warning. 3 months later, he proposed. 6 months after that, they were married in a ceremony that made the society pages of every major newspaper in New England. And exactly 12 months after the wedding, Edmund Thornbridge died of a sudden heart attack. Now lying paralyzed in a hospital bed while his wife planned his murder, Bash replayed that conversation in his mind 1,000 times. I'm afraid you'll get hurt. Not afraid of Genevieve. Afraid for Bash. Because Edmund had known. Somehow he'd known. And Bash had been too arrogant, too stubborn, too desperate to prove his independence to listen. The guilt was almost worse than the paralysis. 3 days after waking in the hospital, they transferred him to Thornbridge Manor. Bash felt every bump in the road during the ambulance ride from Boston to Rhode Island. His body was strapped to a gurney covered in blankets that did nothing to warm the ice spreading through his veins. He could hear the EMT in front discussing the Patriots' latest game. In back, a young paramedic checked his vitals every few minutes, speaking to him in the exaggerated tones people use with small children. Almost there, Mr. Thornbridge. Just hang in there. Bash wanted to tell him that hanging in there was literally the only thing he could do. The manor appeared through the ambulance's rear windows. The Thornbridge estate had been in the family for 5 generations. 30 rooms of Georgian architecture set on 200 acres of Rhode Island coastline. Old money, old power, old ghosts. 6 footmen carried him up the grand staircase to the master bedroom, the room where his father had slept, where Edmund had died in his sleep alone, while Genevieve claimed she'd been visiting friends in Hartford. They laid Bash on the massive 4-poster bed with its dark oak posts and burgundy curtains, arranged his limbs like he was already a corpse being prepared for viewing. Careful with Mr. Thornbridge, a woman's voice said. Constance Merriweather, the head housekeeper. She'd worked for the Thornbridge family since before Bash was born. A small woman in her late 60s with silver hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that missed nothing. Bash heard her crying as the EMTs left. "Oh, Master Sebastian," she whispered, her hand briefly touching his. "This isn't right. None of this is right." Then Genevieve's voice sharp with authority. "That will be all, Constance. I'll sit with my husband." "Of course, Mrs. Thornbridge." But Constance's footsteps lingered at the door before finally retreating. Genevieve waited until the door clicked shut. Then she approached the bed, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor with the steady rhythm of a metronome. She sat on the edge of the mattress, her weight making it dip slightly. Through his peripheral vision, Bash could see her examining her nails, perfectly manicured, blood-red polish. "The doctor says you could linger like this for weeks," she said conversationally. "Possibly months. That's inconvenient, but manageable. I've already spoken with Bernard Whitmore about your will. Did you know you left everything to me so thoughtful?" She stood and walked to his writing desk, opened drawers, rifled through papers with no attempt at discretion. "3 years I've played the devoted wife. 3 years of your boring dinner parties and lectures about corporate responsibility. Do you know how exhausting it is to pretend to care about quarterly earnings?" She found what she was looking for, his personal financial ledger. Flipped through it, her eyes widened. 45 million in stock, 28 million in real estate, 12 million liquid, and that's not counting the trust funds. She laughed, genuine delight in her voice. "Bash, you beautiful, boring man. You're worth even more than I calculated." She set the ledger aside and moved to his closet, pulled out suits, checked pockets, looking for what keys? Documents. Access. "Dorian will be pleased," she said absently. "His debts are mounting. 8 million to some very unpleasant people in New York. We'll need to move quickly once you're actually dead. A week of mourning for appearances, then a quiet transfer of assets. No one will question a grieving widow." Dorian, Dorian Blackwell, Bash's rival for a seat on the Federal Reserve Advisory Board. They'd competed for years over government contracts and banking regulations. Dorian was charming, reckless, and rumored to have a gambling problem that his family's old money couldn't quite cover. Genevieve returned to the bed, held up Bash's signet ring. She must have slipped it off his finger in the ambulance. "I'll need this to access your accounts. The banker won't question a sealed letter from the CEO, especially if his devoted wife delivers it personally with tears in her eyes." She pocketed the ring and leaned down. Her face filled his vision. She was smiling. "I almost feel guilty," she whispered. "You weren't cruel. You weren't even particularly difficult. Just boring and far too interested in controlling me." She kissed his forehead. Her lips were cold. "But don't worry, darling. I'll make sure you have a beautiful funeral. The whole Northeast will weep for the tragic loss of Sebastian Thornbridge." Then she was gone, and Bash was alone with the sound of his own breathing and the thundering fury he couldn't express. The nights were the worst. During the day, nurses came and went. They washed him, turned him to prevent bed sores, tried to get him to swallow broth that mostly dribbled down his chin. Genevieve appeared periodically, always when staff were present, always with that perfect mask of wifely concern. But at night, the manor fell silent, and Bash was left alone with his thoughts. He tried to move. God, how he tried. Hours of concentration focused on a single finger, a toe, anything. The effort left him mentally exhausted but physically unchanged. His body remained a prison, locked tight, refusing every plea from his consciousness. On the fifth night, despair nearly broke him. What was the point? Even if he somehow recovered, even if by some miracle he regained control, how could he prove what Genevieve had said? It would be his word against hers. The word of a brain-damaged man against a grieving widow. She'd won. She'd actually won. The thought tasted like ash. Then the door opened. Soft footsteps, different from Constance's measured tread or Genevieve's confident click. Younger, cautious. A woman moved into his field of vision, mid-20s. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore scrubs, but something about her was off. Too alert, too focused. Her eyes swept the room like she was cataloging everything. She checked his IV bag, frowned, pulled out her phone and photographed the label. Then she leaned close. "Mr. Thornbridge," she whispered, "if you can hear me, blink twice." Bash's heart hammered. This was it, his chance. He focused every ounce of will on his eyelids, tried to force them to move, to obey. Nothing. The woman waited, patient. "Try again. I know you're in there. Your father told me to watch for signs." Father. The word gave him strength. Bash concentrated harder. Imagined his eyelids as heavy doors that just needed one good push. And they moved, once, twice. The woman's breath caught. "Oh, thank God." Okay, okay, we don't have much time. My name is Isadora Ravenscroft. Your father hired me 8 months before he died. I'm not actually a nurse, I'm a private investigator. He suspected your wife was, well, he suspected correctly. Bash's mind reeled. Father had known, had actually known, and taken steps to protect him. Edmund died before he could gather enough evidence to expose her, Isadora continued, but he left instructions. If anything happened to you, I was to stay close, watch, document, and help you if you were still aware. She pulled out a small device from her pocket, a voice recorder. I've been recording her conversations with Dorian Blackwell. I have evidence of financial fraud, conspiracy, but what I need is you, alive, awake, as the primary witness. She placed her hand over his. Her grip was warm, steady. I'm going to help you recover. Every night when the house sleeps, I'll come. We'll work your muscles, train your nervous system. Your father left detailed notes about locked-in syndrome patients who recovered. It's rare but possible, especially if the paralysis is partially psychosomatic from trauma. She squeezed his hand. Can you feel that? Bash concentrated on the pressure, on the warmth, and realized with shock that he could, faintly, like a signal coming through static. Good, that's very good. Now we need to establish communication. 1 blink for yes, 2 for no. Understand, 1 blink. Are you willing to fight? 1 blink. Even if it takes weeks, 1 blink. Isadora smiled and Bash saw something in her expression. Determination, grief, understanding. Your father was a good man, she said softly. I'm not going to let his death be for nothing. And I'm not going to let her take you too. She released his hand and moved back to check the monitors. Your wife has been adding sedatives to your IV. Not enough to kill you outright, but enough to keep you docile, compliant. I've been swapping out the bags when I can, but we need to be careful. If she suspects I know she'll fire me. Or worse. Isadora pulled out a syringe and injected something into his IV line. This is a mild stimulant. It'll help counteract the sedatives and boost your neural activity. You might feel strange at first. Tingling, warmth, don't fight it. Within minutes, Bash felt something he hadn't felt in days. Sensation, faint and distant, like signals from a foreign country, but real. His right big toe twitched. Isadora saw it. Her eyes lit up. That's it. That's perfect. Now rest. Tomorrow night we train properly. But Master Thornbridge, she leaned close one more time. Whatever happens, don't let her see you move. Not until you're strong enough to defend yourself. Promise me. 1 blink. Good man. She slipped out as silently as she'd entered, leaving Bash alone in the darkness. But for the first time since the accident, he didn't feel alone. Father had left him a guardian angel. And Bash was going to use every second she gave him to rise from this bed and burn Genevieve's perfect plan to ash. The training began on night 6. Isadora arrived at 2 a.m. when even Constance had retired to her quarters. She locked the door behind her and immediately went to work. We start with the extremities, she whispered, pulling back the covers. Toes, fingers, small movements that won't be noticed during the day. She massaged his right foot with expert precision, not gentle. This was therapeutic manipulation designed to stimulate nerve endings and muscle memory. Your father left me research, she continued as she worked. Locked-in syndrome patients who recovered all followed similar patterns. Small movements first, then larger muscle groups. Speech comes last because it requires the most complex neural coordination. Bash focused on his toes, on willing them to move. Nothing. Don't force it. Think of it like remembering a song you haven't heard in years. The memory is there. You just have to find the right frequency. She moved to his left foot, then his hands, his arms. An hour of steady, relentless work. Tell me about your wife, Isadora said. The request surprised him. Not out loud, obviously, but think about her, about the moment you realized she wasn't who you thought she was. Bash's mind went to the hospital, to Genevieve's face when she thought he couldn't see. The cold calculation in her eyes. Good, use that. Anger is fuel. Your father said you were always too controlled, too measured. But right now I need you angry. I need you burning to get up. His index finger moved, just a fraction of an inch, but it moved. Isadora's breath caught. Yes, there, again. He tried, concentrated. The finger curled slightly. Beautiful. Your neural pathways are reconnecting faster than I expected. We might actually pull this off. She worked him for another hour. By the time she finished, Bash had managed to curl 3 fingers and both big toes, tiny victories that felt like conquering mountains. Tomorrow night we work on your core, Isidore said, covering him carefully. If you can control your abdominal muscles, you can sit up. If you can sit up, you can eventually stand. She paused at the door. Your father's last email to me was sent the night before he died. He wrote, "The raven will watch over my son when I cannot. Trust her instincts." She lost her father the same way I'm losing my life. Bash's attention sharpened. Digoxin poisoning, Isidore said quietly. My father was a venture capitalist. His business partner wanted to buy him out, made it look like a heart attack. By the time we suspected murder, the evidence was gone. The partner walked free. She met his eyes. I became a PI to hunt people like that, people who smile while they kill. Your father found me through an agency that specializes in corporate espionage cases. We were going to expose Genevieve together. Then he died. One blink. I understand. Good, because I need you to know this isn't just about justice for you. This is for my father, for Edmund, for everyone these parasites have destroyed. She left and Bash spent the rest of the night practicing. Toe curl, finger flex, each small movement a declaration of war. By night 10, he could move his entire hand. By night 12, he could turn his head slightly to the left. By night 14, he spoke his first word in 2 weeks. I so Dora. His voice was a raspy whisper. His throat burned from disuse. But it worked. Isidore actually cried. Your father would be so proud, she said, wiping her eyes. So damn proud. On day 14, Genevieve called a family meeting. Bash heard them gathering in the drawing room below his bedroom. Uncle Thomas, his father's younger brother. Cousin Rachel, who worked in the company's legal department. Bernard Whitmore, the family attorney. Constance representing the household staff. And Genevieve playing her role to perfection. Bash couldn't see them, but Isadora had placed a small audio monitor in the drawing room. The conversation came through a hidden earbud she'd given him. Thank you all for coming, Genevieve began. Her voice was soft, trembling. I know this is difficult, but we need to discuss Sebastian's condition. How is he? Uncle Thomas asked. The old man sounded tired. He'd taken Edmund's death hard. The doctors say his brain activity is declining. The neurologist I consulted yesterday was quite clear. The damage is irreversible. Irreversible? Bernard's voice was sharp. That's not what the initial prognosis suggested. The initial prognosis was hopeful, Genevieve said, but it's been 2 weeks with no improvement. In fact, his responses to stimuli are weakening. They're recommending we consider end-of-life options. Silence. Then Cousin Rachel. You mean pulling the plug? I mean allowing him to die with dignity rather than prolonging his suffering. He's not suffering, Constance said. Her voice was stronger than Bash had ever heard it. He's peaceful, resting. He's trapped in a body that won't respond. Genevieve's mask slipped slightly, just a hint of impatience. Keeping him alive like this is cruel. To him, to all of us. To you, you mean, Thomas said. Forgive me, Genevieve, but Edmund had concerns about this marriage, about your motives. Edmund was paranoid in his final months. Everyone knew that. Edmund was sharp until the day he died. This isn't about Edmund, Genevieve's voice rose. This is about my husband, who is lying upstairs with no quality of life, no hope of recovery. I'm asking for your support in doing the compassionate thing. Bernard cleared his throat. I'll need to review the medical documentation. Sebastian's medical power of attorney gives you authority, Genevieve, but for a decision of this magnitude, I want independent confirmation. Of course, I'll have the doctor send everything over. I'd like to bring in my own neurologist for a second opinion. A pause. Bash could practically see Genevieve's smile tightening. If you feel that's necessary. I do. Fine, but Bernard, I hope this doesn't take too long. Every day we wait is another day of suffering. The meeting dissolved. Bash heard them filtering out. Constance stayed behind. Mrs. Thornbridge, the housekeeper said carefully. Master Sebastian's father left specific instructions in his will about his care. Did he assess him? Yes, ma'am. He wanted Master Sebastian to have every chance at recovery, no matter how long it took. Edmund's dead, Constance. I'm making the decisions now. With respect, ma'am, the will is legally binding. Mr. Whitmore can confirm. Footsteps, sharp, angry. Then Genevieve's voice low and venomous. You've worked here for 40 years, Constance. It would be a shame if your retirement wasn't as comfortable as you'd hoped. A threat, barely veiled. Are you threatening me, Mrs. Thornbridge? I'm reminding you who signs your paychecks. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to tend to my dying husband. In his room above, Bash's hands clenched into fists. Small movements, but movements. And that night when Isadora came, he was ready. Sit me up, he rasped. Bash, you're not. Sit me up. She studied his face, saw the determination there, nodded. It took 10 minutes. His core muscles screamed, his vision swam. But with Isadora's support, Bash sat upright for the first time in 2 weeks. The room spun. Nausea hit him like a wave, but he stayed up. How long can you hold it? Isadora asked. How did you long do I need? Until the winter gala, 6 days from now. 6 days. Bash had been unconscious when Genevieve scheduled the annual Thornbridge Foundation Winter Gala, the event his father had started 20 years ago. 200 of New England's elite gathering at the manor for champagne and charity and social climbing. The perfect stage. She's planning to announce your decline that night, Isadora continued. Declare herself regent of your estate. Make herself the public face of Thornbridge Industries. Not if I announce myself first. Isadora's eyes widened. Then she smiled, sharp and fierce. Your father always said you had his steel spine. I'm starting to believe him. Over the next 6 days, they trained like Bash's life depended on it. Because it did, night 15, he stood for 10 seconds before collapsing. Night 16, 20 seconds. 30. Night 17. He walked 5 steps with support. Night 18, 10 steps. His legs shook, his muscles burned, but he walked. Night 19, he spoke a complete sentence without slurring. Genevieve Hawthorne, you killed my father. Night 20, the day of the gala. Isadora came at dawn, not midnight. We need to move you to the East Wing before the staff starts preparing the ballroom. Genevieve's orders. She wants you as far from the party as possible. Perfect. Perfect. Bash managed a smile. It felt strange on his face after 2 weeks of paralysis. The East Wing connects to the servant passages, which lead directly behind the ballroom stage. Understanding dawned in Isadora's eyes. You magnificent bastard. They moved him in secret. Constance helped, tears streaming down her face. Master Sebastian, she whispered, you're really back. Not back, Bash said, his voice still rough but stronger. Different, better. In the East Wing's small bedroom, Isadora laid out a suit. Bash's wedding suit, actually. Dark navy, custom tailored. It hung off his frame. Now he'd lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks, but it would do. I have everything, Isadora said, pulling out a tablet. Video evidence, audio recordings, financial documents showing the money transfers, testimony from the mechanic who found the cut brake line on your car. Even a vial I took from Genevieve's bathroom, it tested positive for digoxin, the same drug that killed your father. Bash looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd saved his life, who'd honored a promise to a dead man, who'd turned his tragedy into a weapon. Why, he asked. Why what? Why risk everything you could have walked away? Sold the evidence to the highest bidder. Why help me? Isadora was quiet for a long moment. Because my father believed justice mattered more than profit. And Edmund Thornbridge was the only person who helped me when everyone else said my father's death was just business. He funded my PI training, gave me my first real case, treated me like I mattered. She met his eyes. He said you were the same, that you'd build something better than what came before. I'm not doing this for revenge, Bash. I'm doing it because the world needs more people like Edmund, like you, not more parasites like Genevieve. Bash dressed slowly. Each movement still cost him, but he managed. Isadora helped with the tie and cufflinks. When he finally looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. Gaunt, pale, but his eyes were clear. Focused. How do I look? He asked, like a ghost coming back to haunt his murderer. From below, they heard the first carriages arriving. String music floating up through the manor. The hum of conversation as New England's elite gathered for the social event of the season. Genevieve's debut as the tragic widow. Bash's resurrection as the wronged heir. Ready? Isadora asked. Bash took a breath, felt his heart beating strong and steady, felt his muscles responding to his commands, felt rage and determination and cold calculated fury burning in his chest. Let's go haunt some people. The servant passages behind Thornbridge Manor were older than the house itself, built when wealth required discretion, when the help needed to move unseen through the lives of their employers. Narrow corridors with low ceilings, stone floors worn smooth by generations of footsteps, the smell of old wood and dust and secrets. Bash leaned against the wall, breathing hard. The walk from the East Wing had taken everything he had. His legs trembled. Sweat soaked through his dress shirt despite the November cold seeping through the manor's ancient stones. Through the wall he could hear them, 200 voices blending into a symphony of wealth and privilege. The clink of champagne glasses, laughter that echoed off vaulted ceilings. The string quartet playing Vivaldi just like they did every year, just like they had when his father was alive. Isadora pressed her ear to a hidden panel. She's starting her rounds, working the room like a professional. She is a professional, Bash said. His voice was stronger now. Each word came easier. This is what she does. Perform, seduce, kill, move on. He closed his eyes and listened, picked out individual voices from the crowd. Governor Mitchell pontificating about tax reform. Senator Bradford laughing too loud at his own jokes. Uncle Thomas, his voice tired and sad, accepting condolences about his nephew's tragic condition. And there, cutting through it all like a blade, Genevieve. Thank you so much for coming. Yes, it's been incredibly difficult. The doctors say there's no hope, but I'm trying to stay strong. Sebastian would have wanted me to carry on his father's legacy. Bash's hands clenched. The nails dug into his palms. Good. Pain meant feeling. Feeling meant control. Easy, Isadora whispered. Save it for the stage. She was right. Bash forced himself to breathe, to think. This wasn't about rage. It was about justice. Precision. Timing. Everything his father had taught him. Tell me about the layout, he said. Isadora pulled out her phone, showed him the ballroom schematic. Main entrance here, stage at the north end. Genevieve will make her announcement from the podium at 9 p.m. That gives us, she checked her watch, 42 minutes. And Dorian arrived 20 minutes ago. He's staying close to the bar. Nervous. 3 scotches already. Good. Nervous people make mistakes. Bash straightened, tested his weight on both legs. The left was stronger, but the right was catching up. He could walk. Not run, not yet. But walk with enough steadiness to cross a ballroom floor. There's something you should know, Isadora said, about your father's death. Bash looked at her. I found his phone. The one the police returned with his personal effects. Genevieve thought she'd deleted everything, but I recovered the data. She hesitated. He knew Bash. He knew she was poisoning him. The last week of his life, he documented everything. Symptoms, timeline. He even recorded video. The world seemed to tilt. What? He left it for you, in case he didn't make it and you were next. It's dated 2 weeks before he died. She handed him a tablet. On the screen paused mid-frame was Edmund Thornbridge, sitting in his study, looking directly at the camera with eyes that knew exactly what was coming. Bash's finger hovered over the play button, then pressed. His father's voice filled the narrow passage. Son, if you're watching this, I'm gone. And Genevieve is the reason. Edmund looked older than Bash remembered. Tired. The camera was positioned on his desk, angled up slightly. Behind him, the familiar bookshelves. The portrait of Bash's mother. The life they'd built together. I have proof, but not enough for the police. Digoxin in my system. My blood work shows levels that shouldn't be there. But proving she administered it, that's harder. He coughed, wiped his mouth. When he pulled his hand away, there was blood on the tissue. I hired Isadora 8 months ago because I needed someone I could trust. Someone outside the family, outside the company. She lost her father the same way I'm losing my life. She understands what's at stake. Edmund leaned closer to the camera. I'm sorry, son. Sorry I didn't see it sooner. Sorry I let her into our home, into our lives. But I'm not sorry for trying to protect you. Everything I've done, every precaution, every safeguard, it's all for you. His voice cracked. Your mother and I dreamed of the man you'd become. And you exceeded every expectation. You're stronger than me, smarter, kinder. Don't let this break you. Don't let her win. He reached toward the camera. His hand trembled. The Thornbridge legacy isn't money or property or power. It's character. It's standing up when the world knocks you down. It's doing what's right, even when it costs you everything. Edmund's eyes were wet now. I love you, Bash. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry I won't be there to see you take down the monster I let into our home. But I know you will, because you're my son. And Thornbridges don't quit. The video ended. Bash stared at the black screen, his throat tight, his eyes burning. He recorded that 2 days before he died, Isadora said softly. Then he sent me an encrypted email with access instructions. The password was your mother's birthday. Bash couldn't speak, couldn't move. The weight of his father's faith in him was crushing and uplifting all at once. "We're going to finish what he started," Isadora continued. "We're going to make sure everyone knows what she is, what she did, and we're going to make sure it never happens again." Bash found his voice. "How many others?" "What, Genevieve? How many others before me?" Isadora's expression went grim. "4 that I can prove. The first in Colorado 8 years ago. Made it look like a climbing accident. The second in Vermont 6 years ago. Drug overdose. The third in Connecticut 4 years ago. Drowning. And then your father. Uto, all wealthy, all widowers or confirmed bachelors, all without close family. She picks targets who won't be missed, who won't have someone like me digging afterward. But she picked wrong with my father. She didn't know about you. Not really. Edmund kept you separate from his personal life after your mother died. By the time Genevieve realized you existed, she'd already committed. So she adapted. Married you instead." Bash processed this. 4 men dead, his father, nearly him. How many more if they didn't stop her? Through the wall, the music shifted, the string quartet transitioning from Vivaldian to something slower, more somber. "She's about to start," Isadora said. Bash pushed off the wall, stood straight, his body protested, but he ignored it. Pain was temporary, justice was permanent. "One more thing," Isadora said. "Constance told me something yesterday about the night your father died." "What about it?" "Genevieve brought him tea around 11 p.m. Constance saw her coming out of Edmund's room with the empty cup. The next morning he didn't wake up. Tea. Laced with enough digoxin to stop his heart. Quick, clean, undetectable unless you're specifically looking for it." Isadora met his eyes. "Constance kept the cup. She washed it, but she kept it. Said something felt wrong. Said Edmund had been healthy that evening. Laughing at dinner. Planning a fishing trip with Uncle Thomas. Where's the cup now?" "Evidence locker. I had it tested. Trace amounts of digoxin in the residue." Another piece, another nail in Genevieve's coffin. "We have her," Bash said. "We do, but we need to present it right. One-shot Bash. If we miss, she'll disappear. New identity, new target, and we'll never find her." "We won't miss." The music stopped. Through the wall, Bash heard the sharp ding of a champagne glass being struck with a knife. The crowd quieted. Then Genevieve's voice amplified by the ballroom's acoustics. "My dear friends, may I have your attention, please? Showtime." Genevieve stood at the podium and addressed the color of fresh blood. Appropriate, Bash thought. He watched through a tiny gap in the servants' panel. From this angle, he could see her profile. The chandelier light catching in her dark hair. The practiced expression of grief she wore like armor. Behind her, projected on a massive screen, a photo of Bash and Edmund from 5 years ago. Father and son at a company retreat. Both smiling, both unaware of what was coming. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Genevieve began. Her voice carried perfectly. She'd practiced this, probably in front of a mirror, getting the tremor just right. "I know many of you came despite the shadow that has fallen over the Thornbridge family. Your presence means more than you know." She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Lace, expensive, probably bought with Edmund's money. "As you know, my beloved husband Sebastian was involved in a terrible accident 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks. Bash had lost track. Time moved differently when you couldn't move. "The doctors have done everything in their power, everything. But I must face a truth that many of you have already suspected." She paused. Let the silence build. An actress timing her lines. "Sebastian's mind is gone. The man I married, the man who loved this foundation and this community, he will never return to us." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Bash saw Uncle Thomas grip his cane, saw Senator Bradford shake his head sadly. "The neurologists I consulted this week were unanimous. The damage to his brain is catastrophic, irreversible. He may linger in this state for months, but the Sebastian we knew is already gone." More gasps, a woman in the front row openly crying. "Therefore, after much prayer and consultation with legal counsel, I have made the difficult decision to assume regency of the Thornbridge estate." Now the crowd erupted. Whispers. Shock. Uncle Thomas tried to stand, but Cousin Rachel held him back. Genevieve raised her hand for silence. "I know this is unexpected, but someone must guide the company. Someone must protect Edmund and Sebastian's legacy. And as his wife, as the person who knew him best, I believe I have both the right and the responsibility to step into this role." Bernard Whitmore, the family attorney, stood up from his seat near the front. "Mrs. Thornbridge, with respect, we haven't had time to review. I've already filed the necessary paperwork, Bernard. You'll receive copies tomorrow. That's highly irregular. These are irregular circumstances. Her voice sharpened, just slightly. My husband is dying. The company needs leadership. I'm providing it. She turned back to the crowd. Furthermore, I'm announcing the establishment of the Sebastian Thornbridge Memorial Foundation for Neurological Research. $10 million from the estate dedicated to helping other families avoid the tragedy we've suffered. Applause. Tentative at first, then building. She was winning them over. The grieving widow channeling her pain into charitable action. It was perfect. It was a lie. The foundation will officially launch next month, Genevieve continued. All donations will be tax deductible, and I promise to personally oversee every dollar spent. This is how we honor Sebastian. This is how we ensure his death has meaning. His death, not his condition. His death, because in her mind he was already dead. Bash felt Isadora's hand on his shoulder. Now, she whispered. Bash took a breath, then another. His legs felt steadier. The anger burning in his chest had crystallized into something cold and sharp. He pushed open the servants' panel. The door was hidden behind a tapestry that depicted the Battle of Rhode Island. Revolutionary soldiers charging British lines. Appropriate symbolism. Bash stepped out. The tapestry swung back, revealing him to the ballroom. For a moment, nobody noticed. They were all focused on Genevieve, on her performance, on the tragedy unfolding before them. Then a woman near the back screamed. Heads turned. More screams. The crowd parted like water, creating a corridor straight to the stage, and Bash walked through it. Each step was measured, deliberate. His right hand gripped a cane. Isadora had given it to him for balance, but he didn't lean on it. Couldn't show weakness. Not now. The ballroom fell silent. 200 people frozen in shock. On the stage, Genevieve's face went through a remarkable transformation. Shock, terror, disbelief. Then, faster than Bash would have thought possible, calculation. She rushed down the stage steps, arms outstretched. Sebastian, oh my God, Sebastian, you're awake. Her voice was perfect, pure joy and relief. She reached for him, tried to embrace him. Bash stopped her with a raised hand. Don't, he said. His voice carried through the silent ballroom, amplified by acoustics designed to project speeches and announcements. Every word clear, every syllable deliberate. Don't touch me, don't speak. Just stand there and let me look at you. Genevieve's smile faltered. Darling, you must be so confused. The doctors said I was comatose, brain dead, a vegetable. Bash turned to address the crowd. But as Mark Twain once said, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Nervous laughter rippled through the ballroom, but it died quickly as people looked between Bash and Genevieve, sensing something wrong. You shouldn't be standing, Genevieve said. Her voice had changed, still concerned but with an edge now. You need rest, medical attention. Let me help you back to the East Wing where you moved me this morning. Far from the party, far from witnesses, far from anyone who might notice if I suddenly stopped breathing. The crowd stirred, whispers building like a storm. Governor Mitchell stepped forward. Mr. Thornbridge, what are you saying? Bash kept his eyes on Genevieve. I'm saying that for 3 weeks I've lain paralyzed in my bed, unable to move, unable to speak, but very much able to hear. He watched her face, watched the performance crack. Just slightly. Just enough. And I heard everything, wife, every conversation, every plan, every lie you told while I lay there helpless. You're delusional, Genevieve said, but her voice was too loud, too defensive. The trauma. Tell me, Genevieve, what were your exact words as I bled in the snow after the car accident you arranged, after the brake lines you had? Dorian cut. Dead silence. Why, then Dorian Blackwell burst from the crowd. His face was red, Scotch courage failing him. That's insane, Bash. I don't know what you think you heard, but I think I heard you and my wife discussing how to split my $100 million estate. I think I heard you panicking about your $8 million in gambling debts. I think I heard both of you plotting my murder. Bash pulled a small device from his pocket, a voice recorder, the same one Isadora had been using for weeks. He pressed play. Genevieve's voice filled the ballroom. Once he's dead, we split everything and disappear to Monaco. Then Dorian's voice. Can't you just smother him? Speed this up. Then Genevieve again laughing. Patience, darling. Slow is safer. No one questions a man dying from his injuries. The crowd erupted. Shouts, gasps. people backing away from Genevieve and Dorian like they carried plague. Bash stopped the recording. I have hours more. Would you like to hear the part where you discussed poisoning my father? Or the part where you forged documents to access my bank accounts? Or perhaps the part where you laughed about my boring lectures on responsibility? Genevieve's composure shattered. You don't understand. You weren't there. You don't know what it was like being married to you being trapped in this mausoleum pretending to care about quarterly reports and board meetings and your endless, tedious. I was boring, Bash interrupted. I accept that. I was focused on work instead of my wife. I took you for granted. But Genevieve, he stepped closer, close enough to see the panic in her eyes. That doesn't justify murder. She stumbled backward. It wasn't, you have no proof. And actually, Isadora said, emerging from the servant's passage with a tablet in her hands, we have quite a lot of proof. She moved to stand beside Bash, projected the tablet's screen onto the same display that had shown Bash and Edmund's photo. Financial records appeared, transfers from Thornbridge accounts to offshore holdings, forged signatures, doctored death certificates. 11 transfers totaling $6 million, Isadora said. Her voice was clear, professional. All made in the last 3 weeks while Mr. Thornbridge was incapacitated, all signed with forged signatures. The display changed. Security footage from the Thornbridge garage. Grainy but clear enough. Dorian's car pulling up at 2 a.m. Dorian himself opening the hood of Bash's Mercedes, working for 10 minutes, driving away. This footage is from the night before Mr. Thornbridge's accident, Isadora continued. An independent mechanic examined the vehicle afterward. The brake line was deliberately severed, partial cut designed to fail under pressure. Dorian lunged for the exit, but Uncle Thomas was faster than he looked. The old man's cane shot out, tripping Dorian. He fell hard. 2 waiters, actually Isadora's PI colleagues in disguise, immediately pinned him down. And finally, Isadora said, we have this. The screen changed again. Edmund Thornbridge appeared, sitting in his study, looking directly at the camera. The entire ballroom watched in silence as Edmund detailed his poisoning, as he named Genevieve as his killer, as he left his final message for his son. When the video ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Bash looked at Genevieve. She'd collapsed into a chair, her blood-red dress pulled around her like evidence. I almost feel sorry for you, Bash said quietly. Almost. Bernard Whitmore approached his phone, already to his ear. The police are on their way. Governor, I trust you'll ensure they arrive quickly. Governor Mitchell nodded grimly, already calling the Attorney General. This is attempted murder of a peer. Conspiracy. Fraud. She'll never see daylight again. Genevieve looked up at Bash. The performance was completely gone now. What remained was something cold and reptilian. You were supposed to die, she hissed. You boring, self-righteous, entitled. But I didn't, Bash said. Because my father loved me enough to protect me even from beyond the grave. Because Isadora honored a promise to a dead man. Because Constance knew something was wrong and kept evidence. Because the people who truly knew me, they believed I was worth saving. He gestured to the crowd. These people came tonight to mourn me, to honor my father's legacy. Instead, they're witnessing justice. Not revenge. Justice. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Genevieve stood, drew herself up with whatever dignity she had left. I want a lawyer. You'll get one, Bash said. The best the state provides. You'll get a fair trial, full due process, every protection the law offers. Because that's what separates us from you. We believe in justice, not murder. The police arrived. Detective Sarah Brennan Bash recognized her from a charity event last year, entered with 4 officers. Sebastian Thornbridge, she asked. That's me. And we have a warrant for the arrest of Genevieve Hawthorne and Dorian Blackwell. She looked at Isadora. You the one who called this in? I am. Evidence package is as comprehensive as you claimed. More so, I've been documenting for 8 months. Detective Brennan nodded with satisfaction. She approached Genevieve, handcuffs ready. Genevieve Hawthorne, you're under arrest for attempted murder conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and accessory to murder in the death of Edmund Thornbridge. You have the right to remain silent. As Brennan read the Miranda rights, Genevieve locked eyes with Bash one last time. I loved you, she said, in the beginning, before I knew what you were worth. I actually loved you. No, Bash said. You loved the idea of me, the access, the money, the power, but you never loved me. Because love requires seeing someone as human, and you never saw any of us as anything more than marks. She laughed, bitter and sharp. You think you've won. But you haven't. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering who you can trust, looking over your shoulder, questioning every smile, every touch, every word. I've destroyed your ability to love anyone ever again. Bash smiled. Maybe. But I'm alive to experience that doubt. My father isn't, and you made sure of that. They led her away. Dorian went quietly, already trying to cut a deal with the officers. When the door closed behind them, the ballroom remained silent for a long moment. Then Uncle Thomas started clapping. Slowly the rest joined in, 200 people offering applause that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Not celebration exactly, something more complex, relief, respect, recognition of survival. Bash's legs gave out. Isidore and Constance caught him before he hit the floor. They guided him to a chair as Bernard called for an ambulance. I'm fine, Bash protested, but his voice was weak. You're exhausted, Isidore said. You just walked into a ballroom 3 weeks after being paralyzed. You confronted your attempted murderer in front of 200 witnesses. You're entitled to collapse. The evidence is secure. Multiple copies, already with the Attorney General, the FBI, and 3 independent law firms. Even if something happens to me, it all comes out. Bash nodded, let himself relax into the chair. His body ached, his mind felt like static. But underneath it all, something else. Peace. Thank you, he said to Isadora, for everything. She smiled. Your father would have done the same for me. I'm just paying it forward. The EMTs arrived. They insisted on taking him to the hospital for observation. Bash didn't argue. He'd done what he came to do. As they wheeled him toward the ambulance, he looked back at the ballroom, at the crowd dispersing, at the chandelier lights reflecting off champagne glasses. His father had built this tradition, this community, this legacy, and Bash had protected it. The hospital kept him for 3 days. Doctors ran every test imaginable. Brain scans, blood work, physical assessments. They marveled at his recovery, called it miraculous. One neurologist wanted to write a paper about locked-in syndrome reversal. Bash declined. Some miracles were meant to stay private. On the 3rd day, Isadora visited. She brought coffee, real coffee, not hospital swill, and news. Genevieve's being held without bail. The DA is charging her with 4 counts of first-degree murder across 3 states, plus attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and about a dozen other charges. And Dorian, singing like a bird, full confession in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's giving up everything. Names, dates, methods. Turns out Genevieve has been running this con for over a decade. Dorian admits there were actually 7 men total, not just 4. 7 men, dead because they were lonely and wealthy and looking for love. The FBI is opening investigations in 5 states, Isadora continued. They're calling her the Black Widow of New England. Media's going to have a field day. Let them, as long as justice is served. Isadora studied him. How are you really? Bash considered the question. Tired, angry, honest, relieved, all of it at once. That's normal. Is it because I keep thinking about what she said, about how I'll never trust anyone again? You'll learn to trust the right people. It just takes time. Isadora paused. Your father trusted me. You trusted your father. That chain doesn't break because one person betrayed it. She pulled an envelope from her bag. Speaking of trust, this is from Edmund. He left it with his attorney to be delivered if you survived. And Genevieve didn't. Bash opened it with trembling hands. Inside a single sheet of paper. His father's handwriting. Son, if you're reading this, it means you won. I knew you would. Not because you're ruthless, but because you're resilient. Not because you're hard, but because you have good people around you who love you. Isadora is one of those people. Keep her close. She sees the world clearly without illusions. That's rare. Constance is another. She loved your mother like a sister. She'll love you like the son she never had. Thomas or Rachel Bernard. They're family, real family, the kind you choose, not the kind you're born with. Build your life around these people. Trust them, love them, let them love you back. And someday when you're ready, find someone who deserves you. Not your money, not your name. You, I'm proud of you. Your mother would be too. All my love. Dad. Bash folded the letter carefully, slipped it back into the envelope. He knew, he said. He knew I'd make it. Edmund was smart like that. They sat in comfortable silence. Outside, November rain tapped against the window. The world continued turning, seasons changing, life moving forward. I want you to stay, Bash said, as Chief Operating Officer of Thornbridge Industries. You're brilliant at investigation. You understand corporate fraud. We could use that expertise legitimately. Isadora blinked. Bash, I'm a PI. I don't know anything about running a company. You know about protecting what matters. That's the most important part. He met her eyes. My father trusted you with his life. I'm trusting you with his legacy. Will you help me rebuild it the right way? She was quiet for a long time. Then she smiled. Your father would have liked that. Yeah, I'm in. 6 months later, Sebastian Thornbridge stood in a courtroom in Boston. The trial had taken 3 months. The prosecution presented 147 pieces of evidence. 43 witnesses testified. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Genevieve Hawthorne was found guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to life without parole. As they led her away, she didn't look at Bash, didn't look at anyone, just stared straight ahead with eyes like empty windows. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Bash made a brief statement. Justice has been served. 7 men can finally rest in peace. Their families have closure. That's what matters today. Uncle Thomas gripped his shoulder. Your father would be proud. I hope so. That evening back at Thornbridge Manor, Bash gathered the household staff, all 43 people who kept the estate running. I've made some decisions, he told them, about how this place operates going forward. He outlined his plan: fair wages, profit sharing, a real voice in how the manor was managed. The creation of a staff council that would meet monthly with him and Isadora to discuss concerns and ideas. My father built this estate on your backs, he said. I won't make that mistake. You're not servants. You're family, and family takes care of each other. Constance wept openly. So did half the staff. After the meeting, Bash retreated to his father's study, sat in Edmund's chair, looked at the portrait of his mother on the wall. We did it, he said to her, Dad and I. We protected what you built together. He opened the bottom drawer of the desk. Inside, a bottle of his father's favorite scotch, 25-year-old single malt. Bash poured 2 glasses, left one on the desk for Edmund, raised the other in salute. To family, to justice, to second chances. He drank, the scotch burn going down, warmth spreading through his chest. His phone buzzed. A text from Isadora. Foundation paperwork is done. The Edmund Thornbridge Memorial Fund for Wrongful Death Investigations officially launches Monday. You sure about the 10 million? Bash typed back. I'm sure. Help other people like us. People who lost someone and need proof. That's what Dad would want. 3 dots appeared. Then he'd be really proud, Bash. Rest well. Bash set down his phone, looked around the study, at the books Edmund collected, the chess set they used to play on. The photograph of the 3 of them, Bash, Edmund, and his mother, taken when he was 10 years old. Before cancer took her, before loneliness made Edmund vulnerable, before Genevieve, but also before Isadora, before justice, before rebirth. The past shaped you, Bash thought, but it didn't define you. Edmund had taught him that, through words and actions and one final video message from beyond the grave. Legacy wasn't money, it wasn't property. It wasn't even blood. Legacy was what you built from the ashes. And Sebastian Thornbridge was just getting started. 1 year after the trial, winter returned to Rhode Island with quiet grace. Snow blanketed the Thornbridge estate in silence. The kind of silence Bash had learned to appreciate rather than fear. Not the silence of paralysis, not the silence of secrets, just the peaceful quiet of a world at rest. He stood at the window of his study watching staff prepare the manor for the annual winter gala. The same event where he'd risen from the dead, the same ballroom where Genevieve's performance had shattered. But everything else was different. The guest list had changed. Fewer politicians chasing favors. Fewer socialites hunting status. More people who actually gave a damn about the foundation's work. Families who'd lost loved ones to fraud. Investigators who dedicated their lives to justice. Survivors who understood what it meant to rebuild from ruins. You ready for tonight? Isadora asked from the doorway. Bash turned. His chief operating officer looked different too. Gone were the scrubs and ponytail. Tonight she wore a navy dress that probably cost a month's salary. But her eyes were the same, sharp, vigilant, always watching. Ready as I'll ever be, he said. How many RSVPs? 212. We had to turn away about 50. Good problem to have. Isadora moved to stand beside him at the window. Outside, Constance was directing the placement of ice sculptures. The older woman had taken to her new role as estate manager with surprising enthusiasm. Turned out decades of silent observation had given her opinions. Strong ones. I got a call this morning, Isadora said carefully, from the prison. Bash's stomach tightened, and Genevieve requested to speak with you, face to face. He should have expected this, should have been prepared, but the name still hit like a punch. What does she want? She wouldn't say, just asked if you'd consider visiting before the gala. Said it was important. Bash was quiet for a long moment. What do you think? I think she's a manipulative psychopath who spent a year in maximum security figuring out new ways to get under your skin. Isadora paused. But I also think you'll wonder what she wanted if you don't go. And wondering gives her power. She was right. Bash hated that she was right. Tell them I'll come. Tomorrow. 1 hour. You and a guard present the entire time. You sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. MCI Framingham Women's Prison sat 40 miles outside Boston. Concrete and razor wire and the kind of institutional brutality designed to break spirits. They processed Bash through security. Metal detector. Pat down. Confiscated his phone and wallet. Led him through corridors that smelled of disinfectant and despair. The visiting room was exactly what he expected. Plastic chairs bolted to the floor. Plexiglass dividers. Guards stationed at every exit. A dozen other visitors scattered throughout speaking in low tones to inmates in orange jumpsuits. Then they brought her in. Genevieve had aged 5 years and 1. Her dark hair, once glossy and perfect, hung limp around her face. No makeup, no jewelry. The orange prison jumpsuit hung off a frame that had lost 20 pounds. But her eyes were the same, sharp and calculating and utterly cold. She sat down across from Bash, picked up the phone on her side of the divider. He did the same. "Hello, husband," she said. Bash kept his voice neutral. "You're not my wife. Haven't been for a year. The divorce papers say otherwise. But you're right, I was never really your wife. Just an actress, playing a role." "What do you want, Genevieve?" She leaned back in her chair, studied him like he was a painting in a museum. "You look good, healthy, like you've been sleeping well." "I have. No nightmares. No waking up wondering if the person next to you is planning your murder." "There's no one next to me. I sleep alone." Something flickered in her eyes. Satisfaction, maybe. The idea that she damaged him beyond repair. "That's what I thought," she said. "I wanted to see it for myself. Wanted to confirm that I succeeded even in failure." "You didn't succeed at anything. You're in prison for life. But you're in a different kind of prison, aren't you? One made of doubt and paranoia and the inability to trust anyone who gets too close." She smiled. "I may be behind bars, Bash, but you are too. We're both serving life sentences. Mine is just more honest." Bash felt anger rising, forced it down. This was what she wanted, to provoke him, to prove she still had power. "Is that why you asked me here to gloat about psychological damage?" "No," Genevieve's smile faded. "I asked you here because I have information you need. I don't need anything from you. You need this. It's about your father." Bash's hand tightened on the phone. "What about him?" "Edmund didn't just suspect me. He knew. Had known for months before he died. He was building a case. Had evidence I didn't know about until after his death. We found his video, his documentation. We know all this." "You don't know everything." Genevieve leaned forward. 3 weeks before he died, Edmund met with someone, a woman. I followed him to a cafe in Cambridge. They talked for 2 hours. When he left, she gave him a folder, thick, full of documents. "Who was she?" "I don't know, but I think she was connected to one of my previous marks, Daniel Kowalski, the one in Vermont, the drug overdose." Bash's mind raced. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm going to die in here. And before I do, I want the full story told. All of it. Every kill. Every con. Every mistake." She met his eyes. "I want people to know exactly what I did. How I did it. Why I did it." "That's insane. You'll never get parole if—" "I'm never getting parole anyway. Life without possibility. Remember." Her voice was flat. "But I can control my legacy. I can be the cautionary tale. The monster in the dark that people whisper about. That's better than being forgotten." "You're sick." "I'm realistic. And I'm offering you something valuable. Information about your father's investigation. Names, dates, evidence I hid that he was looking for. In exchange, you write my story. Make sure it gets published. Make sure people remember Genevieve Hawthorne." Bash stood up. "I'm not making you famous for being a serial killer. Then you'll never know what your father found. Never know who helped him. Never get the full closure you're pretending you already have." He hesitated, hated himself for hesitating. "Think about it," Genevieve said. "You have my number. Well, My prison's number. Call when you're ready to deal. She hung up the phone, stood, walked away without looking back. Bash watched her go, felt Isadora's hand on his shoulder. She's lying, Isadora said. It's manipulation. She has nothing. Maybe, but what if she doesn't? That night, the winter gala began exactly on schedule. Bash stood in the ballroom's entrance, greeting guests as they arrived, shaking hands, accepting condolences about his father, thanking people for their continued support. It felt different this year, less performative, more genuine. These people weren't here to see and be seen. They were here because they believed in what the foundation represented. Justice for the silenced, hope for the broken, second chances for those willing to fight for them. Senator Bradford arrived with his wife. Sebastian, wonderful event. The foundation's work has been remarkable. Well, thank you, Senator. Your legislation on financial fraud protections made a real difference. Least I could do after what happened to your family. No one should have to go through that. Uncle Thomas appeared, moving slower than last year, but still sharp-eyed. Nephew, you're needed in the library. Someone wants to speak with you. Bash excused himself and followed Thomas through the manor's corridors. The library was Edmund's favorite room. Floor-to-ceiling books. A fireplace that actually worked. Leather chairs worn smooth by generations of thorn bridges. A woman stood by the window, mid-50s, gray hair pulled back, dressed simply but expensively. She turned when Bash entered. Mr. Thornbridge, thank you for seeing me. Uncle Thomas said it was important. It is. She extended her hand. My name is Margaret Kowalski. My brother Daniel died 6 years ago in Vermont, officially ruled a drug overdose. But Daniel never touched drugs in his life. Bash's pulse quickened. Kowalski, the same name Genevieve had mentioned. I'm sorry for your loss. Your father reached out to me 2 years ago, said he'd connected Daniel's death to a woman who'd married him 3 months before he died. A woman named Vivian Marsh. Genevieve's real name. Yes, Edmund and I spent 6 months investigating together, building a case. Then he died. Heart attack, they said, but I knew better. She pulled out a folder, thick, full of documents, exactly like Genevieve had described. This is everything Edmund and I compiled. Financial records, witness statements, medical reports, proof that Vivian Marsh, Genevieve Hawthorne poisoned at least 7 men across 8 years, including my brother, including your father. Bash took the folder with trembling hands. Why didn't you come forward during the trial? I tried, but the DA said they had enough evidence, that adding more would just confuse the jury. They wanted a clean conviction on the murders they could prove. So this, she gestured to the folder, got shelved. Until now, because I've been investigating on my own, and I found something else. Margaret pulled out another document. Vivian had a partner, not Dorian Blackwell, someone else, someone who helped her identify targets. Wealthy men, isolated, vulnerable. His name is Victor Ashford. He runs a matchmaking service for elite clients, very exclusive, very discreet, and very good at finding exactly the kind of men Genevieve needed. Bash's blood ran cold. A dating service for millionaires, specifically for widowers and confirmed bachelors with significant estates. Victor would arrange introductions. Genevieve would do the rest. They'd split the proceeds 60-40. Jesus Christ. Victor's still operating, still introducing wealthy men to beautiful women who just might turn out to be black widows. I've identified at least 3 suspicious deaths in the past year linked to women he introduced. Bash looked at the documents, at the names, at the evidence his father had died collecting. What do you need from me? Resources, access, the credibility that comes with the Thornbridge name. Help me shut Victor down before he enables another murder. Bash didn't hesitate. You have it, all of it. Margaret smiled, sad but determined. Edmund said you were like him. He was right. The gala's main event began at 9 p.m. 200 guests gathered in the ballroom, the same room where Bash had confronted Genevieve a year ago. But tonight the energy was different. Hopeful instead of shocked. United instead of divided. Bash stood at the podium. No notes, no teleprompter, just him and the truth. Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight, for supporting the Edmund Thornbridge Memorial Foundation in its first year of operation. Applause, warm and genuine. Last year I stood in this room and exposed a monster. Tonight I want to talk about what we've built from those ashes. He gestured to the screen behind him. Images appeared. Families reunited with evidence of their loved ones' murders. Convictions secured. Justice served. This year the foundation helped solve 43 cases of suspicious death. We provided resources for 27 families to pursue legal action against suspected killers. We funded forensic audits that uncovered $200 million in fraudulent estate transfers. More applause. Bash let it fade before continuing. But numbers don't tell the whole story. People do. The screen changed. A woman appeared, early 30s, holding a photograph of an older man. This is Sarah Martinez. Her father Robert died 3 years ago, officially ruled a heart attack. But Sarah suspected his new wife had poisoned him. She spent her life savings trying to prove it. Got nowhere. Then she contacted our foundation. The image changed to legal documents. A conviction. We funded the forensic analysis, paid for expert witnesses. Robert Martinez's wife is now serving 25 years for murder. Sarah got justice. And her father can finally rest in peace. Bash could see people crying. Not sad tears, grateful tears. The tears of people who understood what it meant to be heard. That's what this foundation does. We listen to the people everyone else dismisses. We investigate the deaths everyone else calls accidental. We give voice to the silenced. He paused, looked out at the crowd. My father spent his last months trying to protect me, trying to expose the woman who would eventually kill him. He failed to save himself. But his work saved me, and now I'm using what he built to save others. Bash's voice grew stronger. Edmund Thornbridge believed justice wasn't a privilege for the wealthy. It was a right for everyone. That legacy doesn't die with him. It grows, it spreads. It becomes something bigger than one man or one family. He raised his glass. To Edmund, to all the fathers, brothers, sons and daughters we've lost to greed and cruelty, and to the work we still have ahead of us, may we never stop fighting for truth. To Edmund, the crowd echoed. They drank, and in that moment Bash felt something shift. The weight he'd carried for a year, the guilt, the anger, the grief, it didn't disappear. But it transformed into something else. Purpose. After midnight, when the last guest had departed, Bash returned to the study. Isadora was waiting, along with Margaret Kowalski and a third person Bash didn't recognize. Older man, silver hair, expensive suit, the bearing of someone used to authority. Bash, this is FBI Special Agent Carl Morrison, Isadora said. He runs the white-collar crime division for the Northeast region. Morrison stood and shook Bash's hand. Mr. Thornbridge, I've been following your foundation's work. Impressive results. Thank you. What brings you here tonight? Ms. Kowalski and Ms. Ravenscroft have brought some concerning information to my attention about a man named Victor Ashford and a potential conspiracy to facilitate multiple murders across state lines. I'm listening. For the next hour, they laid it out. Victor's matchmaking service, the pattern of deaths, the money trail connecting him to at least 5 different black widows over the past decade. Not just Genevieve, an entire network. We've been investigating Victor for 6 months, Morrison said, but we haven't had enough evidence for an arrest warrant. What you've compiled here, he gestured to Margaret's documents. This changes everything. What do you need from us? Cooperation, testimony, and possibly your help setting up a sting operation. Bash looked at Isadora. She nodded. Whatever you need, Bash said. Let's burn this entire operation to the ground. Morrison smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. 3 months later, Bash sat in a federal courtroom in Manhattan. Victor Ashford stood before the judge, handcuffed, defeated. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Financial records, wiretaps, testimony from 3 different black widows who'd all used his service to find their victims. The sting operation had worked perfectly. An undercover agent posing as a wealthy widower. Victor making the introduction to a woman who turned out to be another undercover operative. The entire transaction recorded, plus Margaret's documentation connecting Victor to 12 deaths total across the network he'd built. The judge read the verdict. On all counts, we find the defendant guilty. Victor showed no emotion, just stared straight ahead as they sentenced him to 40 years in federal prison. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Bash made a brief statement. Today, justice was served for at least 12 men whose deaths were facilitated by Victor Ashford's criminal enterprise. Their families can finally have closure. That's what matters. Margaret Kowalski stood beside him. She'd been instrumental in building the case, spent months working with the FBI, testified for 3 days about her brother's murder. How does it feel? A reporter asked her. Like I can breathe again, Margaret said. Like my brother's death meant something. That evening, back at Thornbridge Manor, Bash gathered his inner circle. Isadora, Margaret, Uncle Thomas, Constance, Bernard Whitmore. the people who'd stood by him through everything. I have an announcement, Bash said. I'm stepping down as CEO of Thornbridge Industries. Shocked silence. Not permanently, he clarified, but I'm transitioning to chairman of the board. Isadora will take over as CEO. Isadora's eyes went wide. Bash, I can't. You can. You've been running operations for 6 months already. The board trusts you. I trust you. And this frees me up to focus full-time on the foundation. He turned to Margaret. I want you to join as director of investigations. Lead the team. Build the infrastructure. Help us scale this operation nationally. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I'd be honored. Uncle Thomas, I need you on the foundation's board. Keep me honest. Make sure I'm honoring Dad's vision. The old man nodded. About time you asked. Constance, you're already doing an incredible job here, but I want to make it official. Estate manager with full authority over household operations and staff. Fair wages, profit sharing, all of it. Constance actually laughed through her tears. Master Sebastian, your mother would be so proud of him. I hope so, because this is what she and Dad built. Not a dynasty, a family. And families take care of each other. He raised his glass. To new beginnings, to justice, to the future we're building together. They drank, and Bash felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. 6 months after Victor Ashford's conviction, Bash received a letter. Prison stationery, MCI Framingham. Genevieve's handwriting. He almost threw it away. Almost burned it in the fireplace without reading. But curiosity won. Bash, I heard about Victor, about the sting operation, about the 12 men whose deaths you avenged. I won't congratulate you, but I will say I'm impressed. You were right. I had nothing to offer you. No secret information, no hidden evidence, just manipulation. One last attempt to prove I still had power over you. But you didn't need what I claimed to have. You found it yourself, built the case yourself, got justice yourself. That's the difference between us. I took. You built. The prison is offering educational programs, GED courses, associate's degree, if I'm interested. I laughed when they first told me. Thought it was your idea. Some cruel joke. But it's not, is it? It's genuine. An actual opportunity for someone who doesn't deserve it. I haven't decided yet. Part of me wants to reject it. Wants to stay the monster you need me to be. The cautionary tale. The darkness that makes your light look brighter. But another part wonders what I could have been if I'd chosen differently. If I'd built instead of destroyed. If I'd loved instead of used. I'll never know. That ship sailed long ago. But maybe I can become someone different than my worst moment. Maybe that's all redemption really is. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just telling you that your mercy is more devastating than your revenge ever could have been. You won. Completely and absolutely. I hope you build something beautiful from the ashes. G. Bash read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and placed it in his desk drawer. He'd keep it, not as a trophy, as a reminder of what he'd survived, what he'd overcome, what he'd chosen to become despite everything. That night, he returned to the room where he'd spent 3 weeks paralyzed. The master bedroom. He hadn't slept here since recovering, couldn't bear to. But it was time. He opened the curtains, let moonlight flood in, sat on the edge of the bed where Genevieve had whispered her plans, where Isadora had trained him back to life, where he'd fought his way back from the edge of death. The room felt different now. Not haunted, just empty, ready to be filled with something new. Bash lay down, closed his eyes, and for the first time in 18 months, slept through the night without nightmares. 1 year later, the Thornbridge Foundation opened its 10th regional office. Bash stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony in Seattle, Isadora beside him, Margaret coordinating the media, Uncle Thomas making jokes about West Coast coffee, Constance fretting about whether the office had proper tea service. Family. The foundation had grown beyond anything Bash imagined. 50 full-time investigators, partnerships with law enforcement in 37 states, a conviction rate of 73% on cases they took, 218 families who'd found justice. And it was just the beginning. After the ceremony, Bash walked along the Seattle waterfront, watched the sun set over the Pacific, thought about his father, about his mother, about the legacy they'd built and the one he was building. His phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Thornbridge, this is Linda Martinez. You don't know me, but my husband died 2 years ago. The police said it was an accident, but I know it wasn't. I've been trying to prove it for months, getting nowhere. Then I heard about your foundation. Bash stopped walking. Tell me everything, Ms. Martinez. She did, and Bash listened, really listened. The way Isadora had listened to him, the way his father had listened to Margaret. We'll help you, Bash said when she finished. Send everything you have to our intake coordinator. We'll review it within 48 hours. If there's a case, we'll pursue it. No cost to you. Linda's voice broke. Thank you. God, thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we get you answers. He hung up and looked out at the water. Another case. Another family needing help. Another chance to turn tragedy into justice. This was the work. This was the legacy. Not money or property or power. The choice to stand up when the world knocked you down. The choice to build when it would be easier to destroy. The choice to offer mercy when revenge would feel better. Bash pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photo. Him and Edmund at the company retreat. Both smiling, both unaware of what was coming. We did it, Dad, he said quietly. We turned your death into something that saves lives. That's the best revenge there is. The sun dipped below the horizon. Darkness came, but lights began to glow across the city. Millions of them, each one a person living their life, fighting their battles, building their futures. Bash smiled. He turned and walked back toward the hotel. Tomorrow he'd fly home to Rhode Island, meet with the board, review new cases, continue the work. But tonight he'd rest. He'd earned it. And in a prison cell 3,000 miles away, Genevieve Hawthorne sat at a small desk with a GED textbook open in front of her. She picked up a pencil, hesitated, then wrote her name at the top of the practice test. Small steps, but steps forward nonetheless. The world kept turning, people kept fighting, justice kept winning. Not always, not perfectly, but enough, and sometimes enough was everything.